last few episodes, we've been working with the session service and working around user authentication and authorization. In this episode, we're going to be exploring authenticated routes. So as you can see, we can go to this authenticated route when we're logged in. But if we log out, then when we hit this, it'll take us to the login route. And then when we log in, it'll take us to the authenticated route where we were wanting to go before. So how do we build that? We'll start with what we had last time, and then we'll generate a route called Authenticated. That will give us our route and our template, and add that to the router. We'll paste in some text for the authenticated route, and then here in our application for our header, we'll have a link. So we can go here, can hit this, and it'll take us to the authenticated route. However, if we're logged out, it'll still let us go to the authenticated route. We want to block users who aren't signed in from visiting this page. We'll do this in the authenticated route. So first we'll inject the session service, and then we'll use the before model hook. So before model is run, before the model, but also important for our purposes before anything is displayed on the page. So we'll check, see if the current user is on the session, and if it's not, then we'll transition to the user's route. If you're doing this, you might transition to the login route, but we haven't made a specific one of that yet. So now you'll see that if we try to go the authenticated route when we're not logged in, it'll redirect us to the user's route, like we expect. But if we're logged in, then it works. So right now it works, but currently it redirects them to the monsters route after every time they sign in. But if they got redirected to the user's login route right after trying to go to the authenticated route, then they're going to want to go back to the authenticated route and not to the monsters route. How can we set this up? Our first step will be in the authenticated route, where we're doing the redirection. So the before model hook, it has some arguments, and the first one of those arguments is the transition. So what we can do is we'll get the login controller using controller 4, and then we'll set the property previous transition to the transition that's happening as we're going through this before model hook. So it'll remember that it's trying to go to the authenticated route. Then in the user's controller, which we're having double as a login controller for now, we're going to grab that previous transition. And then if that transition is available, then first we're going to set it to null so we don't accidentally do it again next time that we log in. And then we're going to retry that transition. So what that'll do is if we come from the authenticated route, it'll send us back to the authenticated route. So what happens if we want to make more routes authenticated? One solution is just to copy all of this and paste it in somewhere else. So if we wanted to make the monsters route authenticated, we could just paste it in like that. However, a mix-in seems a much better choice. So let's generate our mix-in, and then we can copy this code into the mix-in. And so we'll have this code exactly once. That means in the authenticated route, we can delete all of this code, and we'll replace that by importing the mix-in and using it. Then we can do the same thing for the monsters route. Of course, we'll still be leaving in the model. So now, to make a route authenticated, we only have to import the mix-in and include it. Let's see this in action. So, of course, we can go to the monsters route, we can go to the authenticated route just fine. But when we log out, then we'll try to go to the monsters route. It redirects us to the user's route. We log in, it takes us to the monsters route. Then, if we repeat the process with the authenticated route, we see it works there as well. So even though the code is completely generic, it still has the correct redirection behavior. So that's authenticated routes. One thing to note before we leave is that these aren't completely secure even if we had more than just a login button. If we had password protection, this still wouldn't completely protect your pages. The reason for that is because you can easily go into the services, go into the container, and just edit it. So make sure to protect your stuff at the level of the server as well. And we'll show you how to do that next week. I'll see you then.